Good afternoon, everyone. We'll be starting pretty soon here. If everyone could get your seats. Good afternoon. My name is Sachin Pavithran. Welcome to this afternoon session. I am the Executive Director of the United States Access Board, which is a federal agency based in the U.S. federal government. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. One of our colleagues, panel member who was supposed to join us today, unfortunately was pulled into a different meeting that she could not be with us today. So she sends her apologies. So you have the two of us. So we are hoping to share our perspective on disability employment in the public sector, in federal and local governments. And also we would like to hear from you during the Q&A session what you are experiencing in your countries, and so that we can all learn from each other. As I said, I'm Sachin Pavithran, Executive Director of the United States Access Board, which is a small independent federal agency within the US federal government under the White House. We are an agency designed to work on technical standards on accessibility. So we design accessibility standards on ICT, so information communication technology, transportation, built environment, which includes buildings and your city structures, so your sidewalks, crosswalks, auditory, pedestrian signals, so the infrastructure around the environment that we live in. So we write the technical standards for accessibility, so the regulations that goes along with the different laws that is applicable, such as the Americans with Disabilities Act and other laws in the US. We are not the enforcers of the technical standards that we write. We write the regulations, and other agencies such as the Department of Justice, Department of Transportation, all the larger agencies that exist within the US federal government does the enforcement of the different technical standards we write. We as an agency, being a small independent federal agency, we have a governing board of 25 members appointed by the president. So these board members, 13 of them are from the general public, appointed by the president, who have expertise in accessibility and or have a disability. And the other 12 of the 25-member board are senior executives or high-ranking political members from 12 of the larger federal departments in the federal government, such as Department of Justice, Department of Transportation, Department of Defense, Health and Human Services, Department of Interior, so 12 larger departments, which is very critical in the work that we do because of the influence they have in shaping the regulations that we at the Access Board finalize. Because all the regulation that we work on as a federal agency has to be approved by the 25-member board. So, and those agencies that sit on our board have to adopt those final regulations if they are the enforcing agency. For example, when we finalized our recent regulation on public right-of-way accessibility guidelines, which is the regulation to ensure accessibility of sidewalks, bus stops, pedestrian signals, etc. The two federal agencies that enforce that particular regulation is the Department of Justice and Department of Transportation. So their role in the work that we did gave them the opportunity to shape what their final regulation looks like. When we as an agency pass our final regulation, it is the minimum standards that the federal government needs to enforce. So it is the baseline for what we expect for the implementation. It is not the ceiling. So other agencies such as who are enforcing can go above and beyond what the regulation looks like, but they cannot go below the baseline which we as an agency set up. So that's how our structure in the US government works when it comes to accessibility regulations. We do provide technical assistance and training for all our regulations for anyone who is interested in our work. And all our information is also available on our website. So every regulation, every guidelines that we have produced over the last 50 years that we've been in existence is available on our website. We provide webinars on the different chapters of each of our regulations, which is archived and free to anyone who is interested to learn more about the regulation. For a small federal agency, we do have a pretty large impact. The footprint of what we have succeeded over the last 50 years is pretty large in scope. There's still a lot of work to be done, and things sometimes take a lot longer than we would like, but we are striving towards making a more inclusive country to live in with the accessibility regulations that we have passed so far. With that, I'm going to pause and have my co-panel member introduce himself and explain about the work that he does.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sachin. It's great to be here. Great to see you all here in the audience. And before I start, I would really like to express my gratitude for the organization to have this chance to have this panel discussion with Sachin today. My name is Stefan VERHAEGH. I'm from the Netherlands. And today I will speak with Sachin and to you from my role as chair of Rijk. In the introduction, I'm going to do three things. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what is the League, why is it important that we are... Thank you very much for noticing that my mic was off. Let's do this again. My name is Stefan VERHAEGH. I'm from the Netherlands. I work at the Dutch government, and today I will speaking to you from my role as chair of Rijk. I'm really happy to be here. I'm also really happy that you all are in this room, and I really look forward to this discussion. In my introduction, I'm first going to address a little bit about what is the League, so you have a little bit of an idea. Why is it important that we have a League in the Netherlands, and then I will share a few of our successes. What is the League? The League is a network organization of employees working at the Dutch government. The Netherlands is a really small country with Amsterdam as capital. The Dutch government is the largest employer in our country. I think over 140,000 people are employed by the Dutch government. And up until 5 years ago, there was no network where government workers with disabilities were united to share knowledge, share best practices, share experiences. So that's why in 2018 we united ourselves as people with disabilities to stand stronger together. And we think it's really important because, as the UN treaty says about people with disabilities, nothing about us without us. What we experienced up until we united ourselves in this network was that a lot of people without disabilities were talking about us, without us. So we thought we're going to change this and unite ourselves, and we are going to talk back and push back as well. We would not only say nothing about us without us, but also one of our goals is also invite us to do things by ourselves as well. A little timeline and a few examples of our successes. We were founded in 2018, then at a local government agency. Then in 2019, we decided to go government-wide as a network of networks. 2 years ago, we received our first funding. That was a really major milestone, because the fact that we can be here today is due to the fact that we have funding. And in 2024, we celebrated our first fifth year existence. And the theme we had there was building a bridge between top officials and people working who have a disability, because we really believe it's very important that the top officials are aware of what is going on at the working floor as well. Right now we are also active at LinkedIn. I invite anyone to look us up there. We have more than 4,000 followers. And if I have one more minute to give a short example, one of the things we succeeded in is before we were there was no software available if you were dyslexic. One of our members here, Evert van Wageningen, he is there. He is the official first person at the Dutch government who is dyslexic. And he made an arrangement that anyone who is dyslexic can ask for software without telling their manager or supervisor. You can get this software anonymously to prevent stigma, for example, or holding you back in your career development. It's really interesting that the people right now who are asking for this software are people who are higher ranking in the government, so that's really interesting. So that's one success we're really proud of, and we'd like to see more as well. And another interesting example, and perhaps we will touch upon it later on in the discussion, is we got funding to do a questionnaire research government-wide as a baseline research to ask for experiences for people working at the government with a disability of what goes well, but also as well what is not going well. So we're really proud of it because these metrics are not available right now, and we don't think that's a very good thing, so we are working to gather these metrics ourselves. So that's a really short introduction. I think I stayed within the time, right? Yeah. Okay, great.
Thank you, Stefan. So to start off our conversation, so Stefan, in your opinion, what would a inclusive public sector or government sector look like, and what do you think governments can do to go beyond just the basic requirement by law? So what can governments do to be more of an inclusive place for people with disabilities to be employed and go above and beyond just the baseline?
Yeah. Just on a very high level, I think two things are really important. First, respect, and second, equality. I think those are the two main pillars we need. Okay, so these are really large words. What we see in the Netherlands, we have quite some regulations and laws to provide this, but when you look at how are these actually implemented, in theory everything is organized really well, but in practice there is still a lot of improvements and a lot of things to be done. So that is how, from my perspective, how I look at what should be done. And really practical things are accessibility, social, physical, digital. There's lots of things to be done. Inclusive leadership, training for officials and managers, psychoeducation, things like that, and also sharing best practices. Because when I say the Dutch government, it sounds like one monolithic block, but actually it's more like a group of lots of different islands, where at some islands things are going really well, but at other islands things are not going very well, and people don't talk to each other and also don't share best practices and things. But I'm really intrigued, how would you say, when you look from the perspective of the United States, how are things going there?
Yeah, so in the United States, since the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act in 1990, there's been a lot of effort put into increasing employment for people with disabilities. And it does not make sense if the law says everyone needs to work on employment for people with disabilities if the federal government does not do their own part. So since the 1990 passage, under President Clinton, there's been a strong effort to increase the number of employees to increase the employment of people with disabilities within the federal government under an executive order passed by President Clinton. Those have wavered over the years. Certain administrations have had more success in bringing in employees with disabilities. One of the common practices to bring employees with disabilities onto the workforce in a in a quicker manner is a process that we call in the US Schedule A hiring. So using the Schedule A process, you're able to bring people with disabilities onto the federal workforce in a much easier manner. It's not a way to bring people in without expertise. You still need to qualify, you still need to have the expertise for the position that is that the position calls for, but it is a process that helps people with disabilities to kind of fast track into the whole process of hiring so that they are not just one application among hundreds of applications probably for that particular position. Often the challenges for people with disabilities is they tend to not get the opportunity to have that, that first interview. So the Schedule A process does help. So in regards to like statistics, the last numbers I have is from 2023. The highest that we've seen so far as recruitment or hiring in the federal government, we've had almost 22% of the entire federal workforce have some level of disclosed disabilities, which is a pretty large percentage. The US federal government employs about 2.3 million employees, and 22% of that has some level of identified disability, which is a pretty large accomplishment. But like I've said, it has wavered over the years. Certain administration takes it more seriously than others, and certain administration, it hasn't worked as well. So it does fluctuate over the years, but this last couple of years has been a prime example of how people with disabilities have had more opportunities to serve in the federal government space.
Can I just say I'm really flabbergasted by this number of 22%, because in the Netherlands we have a quota. That's a number we strive to get up to, and that's a factor 10 less. It's only 2.4%. So I'm really surprised at this high number. That sounds like you're a inclusive champion for people with disabilities in the US.
Yeah, it is a pretty high number, and I think it's because of the advocacy of the disability community within the United States. There's been a huge grassroots efforts to ensure disability employment is taken seriously, and disability employment, to make the best model is to show that the government is taking it seriously, where the federal government has the opportunity to do that. So, but that number, obviously I've given you the best example is over the last 2-3 years. Prior to that, it wasn't as good as the 22%. So we don't know what the future holds, but that was the best percentage that we've had over the last 2 decades.
I'm going to take this number home, back to my own country, and put it there as a best practice, inspiring example.
Yeah.
Look at what other countries are doing.
Yeah. So, Stefan, in your work or in your exposure in Netherlands and maybe other places that you've seen, how does government, or how does the Netherlands government track if people with disabilities are being recruited, and if so, what is the mechanism that Netherlands uses to ensure people with disabilities are having opportunities in public sector, so in your federal government or other state and local governments?
This is, Sachin, it's great that you ask this question, because you really put the finger on the sore spot. We really don't have these metrics, and I think that's a really big problem. And like I mentioned before, one of the projects we are doing is getting hold of these metrics. How many people are there actually? What are their experiences? What is going well? What is not going well? And I mean, you need data, you need metrics to see what is the baseline and how can we improve and how can we make things better. Because if you don't have any data, it's like looking out in the dark, to speak. Yeah. So I think we have a lot of work to do there in our own organization.
Yeah, I think in the US we could do better. So one of the things that we got going in the US, and this is not disability specific, there is a survey tool that is a way to measure employee satisfactory across federal government. So they call it Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey. It's a tool to survey what the employee thinks about their supervisors, but also how the agency is functioning and treating employees. But it does take demographics of the types of employees you have, the diversity of your employees, which does help us to identify what what are the different categories. So we are able to see what disability population that exists. But then there is also another group within the U.S. Federal structure. It's the Equal Employment Opportunity Council, so EEOC, who is responsible to ensure everyone have equal access to employment. And they have a separate survey tool that they use to ensure that all all federal agencies are meeting the categories that has been prescribed under the EEOC guidelines. So different survey tools that we have to report as federal agencies on an annual basis that gives the broader picture of what is really happening in the federal government and how it is being, if the federal agencies are meeting the minimum guidelines at least to, for not just disability groups, all the different categories that they would like to meet. So, but it's not perfect, but it does give us some idea of where we stand as far as, meeting those guidelines.
Can I give a short reaction? Because I'm really inspired what you tell you as well. Because we have this workplace satisfaction questionnaire as well. It's government-wide. They ask all sorts of questions. For example, do you feel excluded based on your gender or on your religion or whatever? But one thing they are not asking is, do you feel excluded because of your health or lack of it, or because you have some form of a disability? And like all problems you don't ask about or don't look for, they won't be there. I think that's a problem, and we are working on to make that better at this moment.
All right, another topic I want to touch on, and this is a topic that's a pretty, when it comes to employment for people with disabilities, the recruiting is one aspect of the whole process. Retention is a whole different challenge as well for people with disabilities in the public sector. And now with the new tools coming out with artificial intelligence, people are using AI as a recruiting tool. So I'm curious, what have you seen as far as how is Netherlands recruiting people with disabilities in public sector? And if they do recruit, what measures are in place for retention? And moreover, what tools is AI being used as a recruiting tool? And have you seen a positive or negative reaction to those kind of tools being used?
Yeah. So actually you have three questions. The first one, recruiting people. Actually, I think we're trying really well to onboard people with disabilities. So that's the good news. But then we have this quota of 2.4%. But that has a negative aspect as well, because when we have those people on board, actually there is no vision anymore on how to retain these people.
Yeah.
Because the employer can put the check mark on, and they have this belief, now we have these people on board and everything is arranged and they will stay here forever. Unfortunately, we get signals from people that when they are on board, not everything is as good as it should be. And there's just no vision, no policies, no guidelines on how to retain those people. So that's something we should work on. And then the last question you have, I think artificial intelligence as a tool might be a real game changer. I see some examples of people, for example, who are dyslexic, who use this, and certainly are much more effective and efficient. I'm not aware of any ways it is actually right now being used for recruitment or even retainment purposes. So actually in the Netherlands we are in this situation, there's much more possible than is actually allowed right now. So I'm interested in how is it in the US?
Yeah. So in the US, I didn't mention earlier about the Schedule A process. So Schedule A hiring is the process that's being used the most for recruitment for people with disabilities. Now, people with disabilities can apply the regular process where everyone does apply, but the Schedule A process does help. It's an avenue for people with disabilities to get an opportunity, at least to get to the interview level. So that is the best recruitment tool we have in the federal government. The retention part gets tricky. So one thing, if you do choose to have a Schedule A process, and if you're hired under the Schedule A process, what happens for that employee when he or she is hired, they have a probation period, which is a 2 years probation period. A 2-year probation period where you can be let go is kind of scary, especially if you've been hired and then within the 2-year period, anytime you could be let go for very simple reasons. So that makes it challenging for some people with disabilities to retain their position. And it does get challenging when your supervisor is not supportive of, the disability community, or for one reason or the other. So that's the trick that we are dealing with. How does people with disabilities, even though they've been given the opportunities, is the federal agency, is the attitude within the federal government or the agency or the subgroup of the federal agency, do they have the right attitude to make sure that people with disabilities, who they've hired, is set up for success? So we do have challenges in retention. Retention is still a problem within the U.S. Federal government. As far as AI is concerned, there's not a wide use of AI tools in recruitment. They are doing some testing in how AI tools can be used in the recruitment side of weeding out applications. There is a lot of nervousness on how it could have a negative impact for people with disabilities. We don't have the data to really show if it has had a negative impact, but some of the science show that it's not going to be disability friendly. So there's still data that needs to be collected to evaluate that. So
we have 7 more minutes. I see
Yeah.
this countdown clock. Is there a chance as well, Sachin,
yeah,
to ask some questions to the audience,
Yeah,
to do a little Q&A?
yeah, let's do that. So if you have any questions or if you have thoughts that you would like to share, now would be a good opportunity. Or Stefan, if you want to ask a question.
Yeah, can I ask a question,
Sure,
Sachin, to the audience? Because we have all these people here in the room who are all expert in their fields. I'm really interested because from the League we're on this fact-finding mission. Is anyone here aware of similar initiatives where people working for the governments who have a disability united themselves into a network, advocacy network, sharing best practices? Because we would be really interested in getting to know of these initiatives. So that's an open call to the room for now, or other questions are addressing the things we just spoke of are also welcome as well. Anyone? I think there are these microphones, and if you press the button, we can hear you as well.
Can you hear me okay? Oh, that's really loud. So I'm Sally, I'm from Purple Space. We're a global disability network of networks, but we work with organisations, corporations, but also government departments in the UK, Australia as well. But I just wanted to come back to your question around civil service networks. So the UK has a civil service disability network.
Oh, great.
And I can certainly help introduce you. And for me, the power of this, because so many government departments, so many different agencies work together, and they also have quite separate chapters in terms of different conditions and different conversations as well. So I see huge power in networks, because it's incredibly powerful to say the US government is doing this, or the UK government is doing this, or this organisation is doing this, so why aren't our organisation? Because it is a competitive advantage. So looking forward to connecting and speaking to people in the room today.
Thank you very much. I look forward to connecting.
Anyone else?
The lady with the red shirt.
Hi, thank you. My name is Silvia and I work in Plena Inclusión. We are an organization from Spain. I'm afraid we don't have this kind of, sorry, we don't have this kind of networks. What we have is a special quota for people with intellectual and development for intellectual disabilities. And I was wondering if you have any special scheme in your countries for these persons.
And what do you mean with a special scheme?
Yeah, if you have any special consideration when you hire or recruit persons with intellectual disabilities, are they working as civil servants in the Netherlands and in the USA, or do you have information about that, specifically intellectual disabilities?
In the Netherlands, we have an organization called VERHAEGH. Yeah, I don't have a translation for it, but they are targeting for this group as well to offer them employability chance. Perhaps afterwards I can tell a little bit more about it, or I can point you to connection.
One thing I do want to ask to you, Stefan, or anyone else in the audience. So we can have a lot of laws in the book that requires public sector to hire people with disabilities. One of the biggest challenges I keep running into, and I keep seeing often, myself, I'm a blind person, and other people with disabilities also see this happening quite often, is you can have the laws, but the attitude of the people, or the societal attitude, is usually the biggest barrier that still exists, whether it's the private sector, whether it's the public sector. What are you seeing in your government sector, in your public sector, whether it's the federal government, the cities, the towns, the state level? What is the attitudinal shift happening? Is there an attitudinal shift happening towards people with disabilities when it comes to recruiting and hiring? Or do you feel like there's more work to be done? And if there's a shift happening, how is it changing? Like what's making the change happen?
I think this is a really good question, and also a really complex question, because I think what we all need is like a culture shift towards more inclusive leadership, and inclusive leadership that's not something from top officials, but we need it everywhere, in everyone. But we also struggling with how can you organize this? How can you? One thing we do put focus on from the league is creating more visibility to this theme. But I still haven't found the answer. I think I do see a shift, a major shift. When I started in my company in 2017, I thought I was the only one. There was no visibility of other colleagues who had identified themselves as an employee with a disability. And now we are there with the network. So things are changing. But we're still not there, and I don't have the answer. If I would have this answer to this question, I would be really happy. How do you look at that question?
I think you do have a valid point. Having people with disabilities more visible, especially in leadership roles, does show that what is possible, and also kind of help shift the attitude. It's not the only way. Like myself, I'm considered as a senior executive in the federal government, and having a position like myself as a person with a disability, being visible in the federal government space, does send the signal that people with disabilities can have these
Yeah.
opportunities. But that again depends upon the structure of those federal agencies if they will let that happen. So it is a very slow process, but the attitude shift, it has a long ways to go, even in the US space. So.
I'm really looking forward to the first Minister President or Secretary General in a wheelchair or blind or whatever, because I think that would be really a great example.
Yeah.
But the time is up. And thank you very much for attending and interacting.
Thank you, everyone.
I want to give you a handshake. Thank you very much for this session and guiding us through. Maybe
Yeah.
we go.
Thank you. It worked out good.
I was really, yeah. 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 And we have a little gift to you.